Most people out there say that grunge killed hair metal. I completely disagree with that, and I'm going to tell you why. So let's get going. So first, I think we need to go back and see what the importance of both glam slash hair metal was to the 80s and what grunge was to the 90s, and kind of dissect both and figure out what made them tick, what made them popular, what was the ultimate demise, where did things change, and who actually killed hair metal. So that's what we're going to talk about. First off, let's define what glam slash hair metal was versus what grunge was and what they became. So glam, very flashy, party-centric style music, singing about getting some and partying and high fives and, songs about chicks and things like that. And very like pop songs kind of dressed in heavy metal. Grunge, on the other hand, was a lot more stripped back, a lot more came from a different place. It wasn't image-driven. It was condition-driven music, and it was a little bit more raw. It was a lot more raw, a lot more, I think, from the heart, kind of from more of a genuine spot. And grunge music in and of itself was created in an environment that is a complete 180 of the Sunset Strip. Okay, the Sunset Strip, it's all parties, beautiful weather, hot girls walking around all the time, guys out there trying to create an image for themselves, and it was just excess and parties every night on the Sunset Strip. Seattle is very gloomy. It rains all the time. It's fucking cold up there. And all people can do up there, they lock themselves away. They start a band. They drink a bunch of beer. They do a bunch of drugs. And they come out with like this really raw, from the heart, gut-wrenching music, And it was completely different. The two styles could not be more different than one another. The only similarity is guitars and loud drums and screaming vocals. Other than that, like every other aspect was completely different. In the 80s, glam was kind of carried over from the 70s, and for the majority of the 80s, it kind of took over. And glam and what became hair metal was like the music in the 80s. And that to me was like, it started off with like new wave and some pop stuff, and bands like Michael Jackson and Culture Club and Duran Duran and bands like that. And it was like this very pop top 40 kind of start to the 80s. And then bands like Motley Crue came out, and Quiet Riot and Rat, and they were like taking the reins from what Van Halen brought over from the 70s, and the glam and the party aspect and over the top stage sets and virtuosic music and all this stuff, and big giant look and fire everywhere, over excess. That was like the goal. It got you on MTV. It got you overnight success. Okay, if you got on MTV, your look was there and people saw it and the music was catchy, you were good. It beat like years and years of hard work on the road to achieve anywhere near what you got on MTV overnight. If you lived in that time, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because I watched it as it happened. It all started with Van Halen. They kind of came through. They jumped from the 70s to the 80s and broke through all the pop crap that was happening at that time. And they brought that party vibe, and they were very lively. And David Lee Roth was very flamboyant, very colorful, and did lots of, acrobatics on stage. He was a total, like the ultimate front man. He was just a fucking party animal, drinking from the bottle of Jack Daniels. People say it was iced tea. Who knows? I don't know. Who cares?
I want to take this time to say that this is real whiskey here. The only people who put iced tea in Jack Daniels bottles is the Clash, baby!
Anyway, he was all over the place, which inspired all these bands that came out of this scene. These bands kind of grabbed onto what Van Halen was doing, and they made their own spin on it. The main bands that brought hair metal to notoriety were bands like Motley Crue and Poison and Warrant and Whitesnake and Dokken. All these bands like that, Twisted Sister, Quiet Riot, All these bands were like the top bands of glam and what became hair metal. It all started with Motley Crue. They were the bad boys. Quiet Riot had come on Feel the Noise, which was a huge hit. And a lot of bands were like, okay, we can see what that's like. That's where the bar was kind of set, at least for that era of glam. And people went off of that. So Motley Crue went a step further because that's what they did. They just one-upped everyone else. They went from like the devil music band, the black leather, the pentagrams. They went to a full glam hair metal phase with Theater of Pain in 1985. It was a lot more pulled back. The look was completely different. The first big ballad that caused all the other bands to do a ballad because it gained so much popularity was on that record with Home Sweet Home. It was like they were opening their souls and they're vulnerable and they're sad because they're away, and it brought in this different dynamic than like Bastard did off of Shout at the Devil. I mean, a completely different dynamic. It brought in this mass female audience. All these other bands were doing the same thing. Everyone was doing a power ballad. Whitesnake, tons of power ballads. Dokken was doing power ballads like Alone Again or whatever it was. Really awful stuff. Cinderella power ballads. All of them did it. It was the formula. It was a new version of the formula. They had everything set, okay? They had the look. They had the same stylists, the same makeup artists, the same videographers, the same record producers. They all sounded and looked, and they were doing the same thing, okay? And it just changed here and there. Okay, now we're going to do ballads because that's what these bands are doing, and they just sold 1 million more copies of their records. So we're going to do that. And it just became this formula. They could do whatever the fuck they wanted. I mean, it was complete excess all the time. Endless girls, endless booze, endless drugs, and it was just everything was done to this glitzy, glamorous level. After a while, it was like, what are we doing? I mean, there was the heavier side of rock in the 80s, the metal, the new wave of British heavy metal, thrash. Those were predominantly the two that kind of carried metal on the heavier side through the 80s into the 90s. But hair metal was just very it was so shallow and so image driven, and I fucking hated it. I just couldn't stand it. I could not relate to any of it because it was terrible. I was on the metal side. I was on the Iron Maiden, Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, that side. I like Guns N' Roses. I loved them. But it was really just an awful time for popular music. It really got to the point where people got sick of it. Poison was the next big band that really fucking kicked the door open with hair metal. And that album cover for Look What the Cat Dragged In, I think that came out in 87. I remember seeing that record for this first time with the drag queen makeup and them poofed up and doing this and winking and, lips open a little bit like the look. And it was like, what the fuck is this? And the music was a direct reflection of that album cover. They were catchy. They were like earwormy songs, and for someone who hated it as much, to be walking around the house going, "Talk dirty to me," was excruciating. You couldn't escape it. It was fucking everywhere, which became part of the problem. Guns N' Roses was the one band that came out in 87 that kind of kicked the other door open to glam metal. They were the band that was different. They were more street. They were more raw. They were badass. They scared the shit out of all the other bands, and they took it into the 90s, just like Van Halen did from the 70s into the 80s. They brought that with them. Hair metal, it wasn't going to last. The image thing, it was done. People were tired of it. By the time 1989 came around, Warrant was the last stand, in my eyes, for hair metal. I mean, Skid Row had some albums that came out after that, but they weren't really, I didn't consider them a hair metal band. I consider them, they were more of a heavy rock band or maybe a glam metal band or something. I don't know, whatever. They were heavier, different look, different everything. But Warrant was they carried the tattered white flag down in the depths with them in 1989 when things really started to flatten out. And it came to this really slow, grinding, makeup stained, horrific death. Pop came back, synth pop and dance music came back in a huge way. Paula Abdul and Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch and Boyz II Men. It was more of the same thing. They took the guitars and the drums out and the screaming, and they put in dance moves and microphones and matching outfits, and they started creating pop songs and dance songs. And that became the new thing for a couple years, at least with the hair metal. They're talking about cherry pie and, you know, sporting a Woody and all this stuff and high-fiving while you're spitting beer in the air and naming your band members in your lyrics of your songs.
I just can't wait to get my hands all over you.
Hit it, CC.
Yeah. At least there was guitars in it, and at least there was drums in it, and that was like the only saving grace. But it was done. I mean, it was like, you know, way down here, and dance was way up here, and like these bands are like, okay, well, fuck, this is not good. Just a terrible time musically. I mean, the 80s, by and large, I'm talking on the popular music side of things, was really pretty fucking bad. I mean, there's little gems that stand out here and there, but I don't know. I don't have a lot of fond memories of popular music in the 80s. So I'm glad I had my little more underground metal stuff, and at least it was then. And, you know, I kind of had that to drive me and make me want something else. When grunge came out in 1991, I think Man in the Box came out early 1991, maybe January, February. I think Pearl Jam had a live that came out maybe a couple months later, but it didn't really, you know, kick the fucking door off the building until Nirvana came in with Smells Like Teen Spirit. I mean, I remember hearing that song for the first time. My buddy told me about it. He's like, you got to hear this band, Nirvana. And I heard him, I think it was the next day on the radio. I was in my car, and it was like the brightest sunrise ever that broke up years of just darkness and clouds and misery. They're a great band. They're not one of my favorite bands, but what they did for music in the early 90s, after these years of just put together, manufactured, contrived, on the surface, bubblegummy, shallow lyric crap that we had for years in popular music and all over MTV, these guys were, and girls, were just this mass welcome change. Like it was like, it pulled rock back from the 70s, like the underground rock scene in the 70s. It pulled from that. And it came from basements and came from practice spaces and bars and clubs in Seattle. And no one expected it. No one expected Seattle, Washington to be the next big thing. Like I said earlier, blue-collar town, college town, those backgrounds came together and they created the environment. It was all at the right time. Created the environment of what became grunge. I mean, it was like a hotbed. There was nothing else to do. So they were playing shows all the time, and all these other bands, they would go see their friends' bands play, and they were like playing different nights of the week all around the city. And it was just like thriving, you know, hotbed of these underground bands that were just killing it. And when Smells Like Teen Spirit came out, it just broke it wide the fuck open and exposed all these bands. Bands that came out of it, like Nirvana, Soundgarden, like I said, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Tad, Green River, the Melvins. The best part is none of those bands sounded alike. Other than heavy guitars and drums and screaming vocals, none of those bands sounded alike. You had all these hair metal bands, all these glam bands that followed this formula, and they all sounded alike, you know, with the subtle differences or whatever, but they all like were following the same path and doing the same thing. These grunge bands were just all these different bands that came from metal, that came from rock, that came from alternative music, that came from like new wave. They wrote what they wrote and they came out with it, and they were all different. And there was no formula. Some of them did guitar solos. Some of them did not do guitar solos. They were all tuned down. It was very dark, heavy, honest music, and no big flashy stage shows. It was like kids stage diving. It had a very punk rock kind of atmosphere. I hate using that term to describe things because I think it's way overly used, but that's the best way. I mean, kids stage diving and jumping off the stage and crowd surfing, and bands up there wearing jeans and t-shirts and flannels and just fucking going for it. No other thought other than to just fucking kill it in the moment. They had no image. There was no hope to be these big, giant, virtuosic bands. It just happened. The image was created out of what they put down and what they were doing and the records they were putting out and the music that they were writing, and, you know, that became the thing. And then all the record labels grabbed that and they fucking strangled the life out of that too. But that's a whole different video. So in my eyes, you've got this giant gap between the demise, what became the demise of hair metal in 89, starting in 89, 2 years of pop boy band dance crap. Ugh. And then grunge came and they saved the day with their gleaming heaviness and their drug use and sad songs about getting fucked up and, you know, being fucked up. Not getting fucked up, that was hair metal. Being fucked up. They grabbed the torch. They grabbed the rock torch from hair metal. It was dying. They had to wash that fucking thing off because who knows where it had been after the 80s. But they definitely grabbed the torch and they ran with it in a big, big way. Grunge was exactly what the world needed, and it served its purpose, and I'm glad it came, and I'm still thankful for it. I still listen to it. I love it. It's good shit. It's heavy. It's detuned. It's raw. It's everything that I want in music. It's not flashy, and yeah. So what do you think? Do you think grunge killed hair metal? Did you forget about that 2-year gap in the story of everyone blaming grunge for killing hair metal? Anyway, let me know. Put it in the comments, and I'll see you next time. All right. Later.